Hello! Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the release of new stories. I'm starting a story. I encountered my ex during our college years. At the time, I was 24 and she was 22. Before meeting her, I hadn't been actively dating, having just ended a toxic year-long relationship that ended amicably. The previous girl was deeply depressed, and despite my love for her, her overwhelming depression affected me deeply. Being an empath, I couldn't handle it, so I decided to end the relationship. My ex approached me as we both lived in the same apartment complex. I had assisted her a few times, but it was when she asked for a ride that our friendship and eventual relationship started. We spent hours together, whether at her place or when she closed at the sandwich store where she worked. She had taken time off from school due to depression and a failed engagement from a year ago, although she never completed her education, transferring twice to different universities. We connected over her story of betrayal and cheating by her ex, although I later questioned the accuracy of the narrative. We became inseparable, and she introduced me to her parents after just 2 months of being friends with benefits. After a few months, I wanted us to officially become a couple, as I had no interest in other girls. However, she declined, citing her past engagement as the reason. In hindsight, this should have been my first red flag, but I gave her a pass. We continued dating exclusively, with neither of us seeing anyone else. A month later, I brought up our relationship status again, questioning why we wouldn't just admit what we were if we were exclusive anyway. She continued to resist. There were moments in our relationship when everything seemed perfect. We shared similar interests and goals, appearing to be an ideal match. However, I began noticing backhanded remarks and comparisons to her exes. Small disagreements sometimes escalated, and my attempts to de-escalate were met with resistance. If she stormed out of my apartment, chasing after her led to accusations of not giving her space, while refraining from chasing after her meant accusations of not caring. She also started gaslighting me about things I remembered her saying, though I was unaware of it at the time. Despite warnings from friends that she didn't treat me right and that I could do better, I dismissed their concerns. After a year of dating, I continued pushing for an official boyfriend-girlfriend status, but she remained resistant, claiming she wasn't ready while asserting that I was the best guy she had ever dated. Her friends knew about our relationship, but I wasn't fond of them, finding them cliché and using my cat allergy as an excuse to avoid hanging out with them. As time went on, we continued going on dates, and she would call me every night, keeping us on the phone until one of us woke up the next day. She claimed my presence helped alleviate her depression and aided her sleep. We faced ongoing challenges, including instances of physical aggression from her, with 2 occasions where she slapped me, not during arguments but as a misguided attempt at humor. Each time, I emphasized that such behavior was disrespectful, and as I would never inflict harm on her, I expected the same consideration. In the midst of one argument, she casually mentioned, "My roommate knows all the guys willing to be NCMOs in the complex, so I don't really need you." After a little over a year of dating, she eventually agreed to officially be in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. However, I observed that she kept this status a secret from everyone except her family, a detail I found peculiar, but chose to overlook since I achieved my desired commitment. Acknowledging my imperfections, there were instances when I, as a significant other, struggled to cope with depression and the stresses of work, school, and family. Although I lashed out, I never caused her harm. I pointed out the hurtful actions she committed against me, leading to several breakups initiated by both of us. Despite the separations, one of us would relent, and we would reconcile. In a moment of manipulation, I resorted to self-harm to express the emotional pain I felt, a behavior I had learned from her, as she had also self-harmed and expressed suicidal thoughts during our relationship. Despite the challenges, I was deeply in love with her, and she claimed to reciprocate those feelings. We discussed marriage, children, and future plans. Throughout this period, she relocated twice, first to an apartment nearby and later to her parents' house an hour north. During her time in the apartment, she threw a party, and while none of her friends stayed to help clean up afterward, I took on the responsibility. She saw this as evidence of my potential as a good husband. After her move to her parents' house, our interactions became less frequent. She responded slowly to my texts and calls, expecting quick replies when she initiated contact. Despite the increasing distance, I remained supportive, responding to her needs even at inconvenient hours. Eventually, I suggested getting engaged, but she repeated a pattern similar to when we became a couple, citing past depression as a reason and proposing a return to casual dating. Despite reservations, I agreed, hoping to prove my commitment to her. Over the following months, she went on dates but would compare them to me, and I refrained from dating, holding on to my love for her. However, after consulting with friends and family, I had a realization. Why was I investing so much in someone who wasn't even my girlfriend anymore? I communicated this realization, and she agreed that any physical aspect of our relationship would cease until we returned to exclusivity. However, it didn't play out that way. Our dates were often accompanied by guilt trips and pressure, and I would reluctantly give in. Post-event, she would become furious, questioning why I didn't resist, why I didn't stop her. Her behavior turned increasingly abusive and hurtful. The most devastating moment was when she declared that if she became pregnant, she would keep it a secret from me, deciding independently what to do. This was particularly painful for me, as I had always yearned to be a father and would never abandon my children. Yet we continued to engage in conflicts, only to reconcile later. Throughout this tumultuous period, we maintained discussions about our future together. She would see a mixed-race baby, I'm Latino and she was white, and express how adorable it could be if it were ours. In moments of depression, she would call and ask, "Would you still marry me?" To which I consistently replied, "Of course I would. I love you." It wasn't until Christmas, during my visit to Florida to see my brother, that suspicions arose. Texts went unanswered, calls went unreturned. Though she eventually called, inquiring about a DVD, her desire to watch it with her family felt peculiar. Upon my return and the start of a new semester, she visited me at my university under the guise of losing her Fitbit. Although we spent time together, I sensed a shift. She then requested that I visit her parents' house in 2 days, signaling the impending conversation. Prepared for the worst, I consulted friends. When I arrived at her parents' house, she admitted she no longer wanted to be in a relationship. I concurred, acknowledging the growing distance. I asked if there was someone else, but she denied it, claiming we were no longer right for each other. However, she expressed additional reasons. She never considered me husband material, didn't envision marriage or children with me, and mentioned concerns about our potential kids not resembling her due to our different ethnicities, which she ironically claimed was not racist. This revelation shattered the foundations of our shared plans and discussions about our future. Despite expressing my love, we agreed to end the relationship with no contact. She took the initiative to block me on Facebook, asserting that if I blocked her, I wouldn't be able to maintain it. We decided against blocking each other on phones in case of emergencies since I had no family nearby. As I drove away, a mix of sadness and relief enveloped me. The following month became an uphill battle. Nights were filled with depression as I grappled with the realization of my codependency on her. Accustomed to her nightly calls, I felt profoundly alone. Many nights were spent on the floor of my room, tears flowing in agony. Yet I immersed myself in work, school, and the support of friends. Approximately a month later, I received an early morning call from her. Initially, I thought it might be an emergency, but it wasn't. It seemed like a butt dial, but given our month-long silence, it felt improbable. I overheard snippets of a conversation, including her voice, and an unfamiliar male voice discussing something related to snow. And I even thought I heard my name mentioned before the call abruptly ended. Against my better judgment, I reached out to friends and discovered she had started dating someone. Feeling a mix of curiosity and concern, I contacted her, admittedly, against my better judgment, to check if she was okay. Her response after a few days claimed it was a butt dial, but she intended to talk to me. She expressed missing our friendship, and for a brief moment, we spoke as if nothing had changed. She revealed she was dating someone, and when I mentioned having heard from friends, she delved into discussing the flaws of her new partner. The conversation took an odd turn when she spoke about his hair, and I mistakenly thought she referred to his current appearance rather than a past discussion. Later, she mentioned receiving random friend requests on Facebook and questioned if they were from me. Ending the conversation shortly after, I felt a peculiar discomfort. Although I initially felt happy for her, upon reflection, I realized I didn't want to maintain contact. The following day, I messaged her, expressing that while I enjoyed our conversations, it would be better for both of us to continue not speaking. She agreed, and I took the step to block her number. A week later, I discovered a voicemail, even though my phone hadn't rung. It was from her, asking if I was home and informing me that she had dropped off some things. I found it irritating, considering I had explicitly communicated the need for no contact. Frustrated, I decided to write her an email. I conveyed my genuine love for her, but pointed out the mistreatment and lies. I thanked her parents for their kindness and emphasized my desire for complete no contact. I blocked her from my phone and warned that despite the hour's distance, our paths might cross due to mutual friends, with the caveat that how she treated me would determine my response, as a friend, enemy, or someone non-existent. I sent the email, not anticipating a response, but to my surprise, I received a reply a few days later from her father. Her father, an ex-Marine and a lawyer, accused me of stalking his daughter. In his email, he alleged that I created fake Facebook accounts for cyberstalking, a claim I vehemently denied. While I had viewed her account from a friend's account a few times, I insisted I had not engaged in any malicious activities. He invoked a line about treating her the way she treats me, emphasizing it as a threat, and warned of obtaining a restraining order if I didn't leave her alone. I was shocked. We had always been on good terms. Struggling to comprehend his accusations, I consulted with some people and, drawing on my university law studies, crafted a response. I clarified that I wanted nothing to do with his daughter, emphasizing that she had initiated contact, even coming to my house without my knowledge a week ago. I questioned the unsubstantiated nature of his claims, asserting that no judge would grant a restraining order based on such grounds. Firmly, I stated my expectation for no further contact from him and his daughter. This episode left me wondering about the stories she might be telling others about me, the narratives she's weaving, and the reasons behind it. Sharing the incident with my friends, they were equally astonished, asserting that I had dodged a bullet and should find solace in that. I initially thought this would be the end of the story, but as I mentioned, this is a tale of infidelity, a lengthy one, but an infidelity story nonetheless. We had ended our relationship in January. In early April, a friend messaged me at work, informing me that my ex had just become engaged. I was shocked. It had only been 3 months. Considering her history of portraying relationships as challenging due to her previous cheating, abusive ex-fiancé, this development seemed incongruent. What caught my attention was a comment on her announcement, someone congratulating her on the engagement and expressing happiness for helping them get together back in November, when we were still together. While we weren't exclusive at that point, given the opportunities I had given her to be honest about someone else and her subsequent lies, I considered it a form of cheating. I felt furious. Everything started falling into place: her distant behavior at Christmas, her desire to watch that movie with someone else. Despite the pain, I moved on with my life, grappling with ongoing depression and trust issues. Sharing my feelings with friends and church acquaintances, I learned more about her. People who knew her but were unaware of our relationship revealed unsettling details. While they might have disclosed more than they should have, I discovered the negative things she said about others. It became clear that she never truly cared about me. She sought someone to care for her temporarily until someone better came along. I realized my love for her was based on who she pretended to be, not her true self. She had identified me as a kind, empathic person and mirrored those traits to deceive me. I had unknowingly dated a narcissist, teaching me valuable lessons about being cautious with my love. As 6 months passed, I hadn't encountered her, but I heard she had returned to my city with her husband, dispelling any stalking notions. Some friends had run into her, and one even embarrassed her with a sexual innuendo about her actions. Shout out to Danny Boy Brothers for life. I received an invitation to a friend's wedding. Although I missed the actual ceremony, I made it to the reception, wrapping up a light-hearted speech poking fun at my friend. His laugh was unbelievably loud and annoying. I was concluding my remarks when a mutual friend entered the room. Right behind her was my ex and her husband. Seeing her surprised me, and as she was about to walk into the room, our eyes met. In that moment, instead of entering, she pushed her husband back into the hallway out of sight and quickly followed. Taken aback, I stepped out to the other side of the building to collect my thoughts and feelings. Despite being generally fine, the shock of seeing her was intriguing. After a few minutes, I returned to the room, only to notice that my ex and her husband had never entered. When I asked my friend if he had invited her, he confirmed, admitting he hadn't even thought about it. He wasn't a very close friend, more of a mutual acquaintance of one of my best friends. Minutes passed, and the newlyweds were about to have their first dance, so we rearranged some chairs. While I was putting chairs away near a door, my ex walked through that exact door, saw me right next to her, and swiftly ran to the other side of the room with her husband in tow. We avoided each other for the rest of the reception, exchanging only a couple of glances. Yet in that moment, I felt whole again. After months of feeling broken and like a piece of myself was missing post-breakup, witnessing her reaction restored my sense of power. I felt genuinely happy for the first time. Despite her being married while I was not, I had triumphed in the breakup. She was ashamed to even look at me, while I had no such problems, possessing a clear conscience overall. Now, over 4 years after the breakup, I'm still single but content. And if you, Maddie, happen to read this, screw you. I'm the one who finished university and you're just a housewife. After all that talk about changing the world, all you're ever going to change are dirty diapers, being nothing more than a liar and a cheat. Story 2. I, 32, male, have been married to my wife, 30, female, for 5 years, and it feels like in the last year, she's become a complete stranger. We were both established when we met, and initially, it felt like we shared the same values. I attended a trade school and acquired a very technical job. I worked various entry-level positions before proving myself and building a reputation in coding, where my references became more valuable than my education. My wife, on the other hand, holds a graduate degree and works in a management position. This initially led to what I perceived as friendly tension. In the early stages, I complained about middle management, viewing them as obstacles between me and completing tasks. My wife, however, saw middle management as essential for directing personnel and resources. I had encountered a series of middle managers who considered code developers replaceable and set unreasonable deadlines, promised features to clients, and introduced scope creep. Every time I shared the frustrations of dealing with my manager, she consistently took his side, despite never having met him. "He sees things you don't," she would say. After about a year of dating, I learned to refrain from discussing my workday unless it involved time off or raises. I often felt she resented the fact that I didn't pursue a 4-year or graduate degree. She had pushed the idea early on, but when I broke down the loans and debt, she dropped it. We both entered marriage relatively debt-free, and our earning power was quite comparable. Around 2 years ago, I joined a company with an owner who communicated directly with me, recognizing my value and potential. I now earn 50% more than my wife, and my manager, while not a technical lead, embodies the qualities of an excellent SCRM master. He knows how to support me without being adversarial, making him a great supervisor. The first 4 years of our marriage went smoothly overall. I refrained from complaining about work managers, and she didn't pressure me to invest thousands in a degree. We enjoyed date nights, shared hobbies, cooked together, and engaged in activities like reading books and watching movies together. During the initial lockdown, we both adapted to working from home. Our spacious house, equipped with 3 spare bedrooms, allowed us to convert 2 of them into offices, one for each of us. My office was already set up, while we transformed the second bedroom into a workspace for my wife. Our telecommuting routines, however, differed significantly. I followed a more formal approach, starting my day with breakfast, a shower, shaving, and donning a suit, a garment I despise, but it helps me mentally shift into work mode. On the other hand, my wife adopted a more casual approach, rolling out of bed, having breakfast, brushing her teeth, and dressing in a t-shirt and sweatpants before heading to her office with an iPad in hand, occasionally playing Candy Crush between emails. It seems like I view it as work from home, while she sees it as work from home. The proximity of our workspaces seemed to create distance between us. While she had multiple daily meetings and left her office door wide open, making the discussions audible to me, I only had a short daily scrum meeting, which I closed my door for to maintain focus. 5 months ago, she expressed feeling insulted by my closed door during this scrum, claiming it made her think I was hiding something. I clarified that it was for peace and concentration on work. Despite my efforts to maintain our shared hobbies, she dismissed them, citing that we already spent the entire day together. In retrospect, I should have pushed the conversation further, but I treated the lockdown as temporary. Things took a turn for the worse when her company initiated a partial office reopening, and she eagerly joined the 50% returning to the rearranged office for social distancing. Although I missed the office atmosphere, my company hadn't reopened its offices, and I felt content as long as I had access to my development environment. Influenced by some coworkers, she started staying after work for gatherings, having drinks at a colleague's place. Despite my attempts to inquire, she became secretive and guarded, growing increasingly distant. It felt like I had a roommate rather than a wife. Last month, she handed me her old iPad on a weekend and requested it to be wiped, mentioning it was a gift for her niece. I thought little of it, as I often perform such tasks for the family. As she headed off to another company gathering, I switched on the iPad. Perhaps my wife had grown so bold, thinking I wouldn't check her phone and would simply perform a factory reset. Regardless, I did check, and what I found in her messaging app was devastating. Pictures, videos, and instant messages with her boss, all evidence of a 2-month-long affair. The sensation coursing through my veins was indescribable, like my blood turning to ice. It felt akin to the scene in Equilibrium, where the polygraph flatlined. I meticulously copied everything, storing it in the cloud storage I use for development projects, separate from work. Simultaneously, I began the search for a lawyer. Initially, I refrained from confronting her as I grappled with the overwhelming emotions and uncertainty about how to proceed. The new numbness I felt while walking through water went unnoticed or disregarded by her. By this point, our bedroom was already devoid of any life. We had entered a roommate stage. Upon consulting a lawyer, he advised me to continue the investigation discreetly. He recommended hiring a private investigator, and I followed his suggestion. Over the next 4 weeks, we gathered evidence, and my lawyer prepared the divorce filing. Be patient, he consistently reminded me. The combination of my icy veins and her apparent indifference made it easier to maintain composure initially. Yesterday, my lawyer informed me that the filing was nearly ready. Our state operates on an at-fault basis, and the private investigator had acquired photos, videos, and incriminating texts. A practically foolproof case. Then last night, something in me changed. The ice turned to fire. She arrived home late as usual, and though I can't recall her exact words, I unleashed my emotions. I expressed my hope that betraying our marriage for her boss was worth it. She responded with malice, turning vindictive. According to her, I wasn't emotionally available, merely lounging all day at home. Despite being the primary earner, I apparently lacked intellectual stimulation, despite holding a highly technical job. In response, I revealed my lawyer's involvement, and she scoffed, laughing at what she deemed a pathetic bluff. She confidently asserted that there was no way I would leave her, emphasizing the financial repercussions for me in the process. According to her, staying with her allowed occasional intimacy, so I shouldn't jeopardize that. It felt like she had become an entirely different person. I retorted, stating, "That's not a marriage," to which she laughed once again. "Honey, this is the 21st century. A woman can have her cake and eat it too." She chuckled and headed to bed. I promptly emailed my boss, explaining the need for a week off due to a family issue, and he granted the request. I spent the night on the couch in my office. This morning, she left while I was getting dressed, uttering only, "Don't wait up." I visited my lawyer's office, where he confirmed the readiness of the divorce papers. Accompanied by a process server, he inquired about how I wanted the papers served. I provided the necessary instructions. My lawyer, with a smile, warned me, "You better not. I've had many clients wanting to serve papers in a creative or vengeful way, but I always advise against it. Judges don't appreciate humor in these matters." He explained the potential consequences, mentioning the risks to alimony or assets. Unfazed, I was fueled by the burning words she had uttered. I wanted her to feel the sting in return. Despite the lawyer's attempts to dissuade me, he relented when he saw the determination in my eyes. The process server, upon hearing my plan, also laughed and declared, "You're my hero." I had to rush order a special item for this purpose. I sent the process server to pick it up and deliver it, along with the divorce papers, to my wife's workplace. The process server later recounted what transpired. He arrived at her office with a large box and the legal papers. Finding my wife engaged in conversation and laughter with co-workers and friends, he asked for her name. Upon confirmation, he placed the box on a nearby desk and opened it to reveal a cake with a custom image printed in frosting. An image of my wife and her boss in an intimate embrace. Though clothed, their actions were evident, accompanied by the words, "Here's your cake. Eat it," piped in icing above the image. I hadn't known such custom cake images existed until that morning. Placing the legal papers next to the cake box, he declared, "You've been served." What followed was a loud screech from her, capturing the attention of at least 8 people in the office. My wife, in a panic, swatted the cake box off the table where it landed on the carpet, but the image remained visible. Her co-workers began berating her, and she responded with tears and screams. The process server made a hasty retreat. My phone was bombarded with messages, but I ignored them, sending her calls to voicemail. She hasn't returned home, but her mother texted me saying she will be staying over there for now. While the initial euphoria from the cake was exhilarating, as hours passed, I found myself contemplating my lawyer's words. Did I make a grave mistake? Story 3. My ex and I first crossed paths in college. She stood out as the most beautiful girl I had ever seen, always surrounded by a crowd of guys. Despite sharing classes over the 4 years, I never pursued her due to the competition. However, after a casual invitation to study together one day after class, our story began. We eventually got married and embarked on our careers in the same industry, but with different companies, an industry dominated by men. While I achieved immediate success, she faced challenges and changed jobs within the first year. Her struggles persisted, and by the third year, she became pregnant with our first son, continuing to work through the pregnancy. A routine physical exam a few weeks after giving birth led to a biopsy of her cervix, revealing precancerous cells. The doctor advised us to have more children quickly before the condition progressed, eventually requiring a hysterectomy. So when she felt up to it, she became pregnant again, giving birth to another boy within a year. After additional tests, different doctors recommended the procedure, and with 2 infants, she underwent the necessary surgery. It was a heartbreaking realization that she was done having children, despite our initial plans for a larger family. Devoting herself to being a great mother, she embraced the role of a stay-at-home mom, managing everything at home. Meanwhile, my career continued to flourish, and I received a job offer from another company with a significant salary increase. Life seemed good. As the boy started school, she volunteered there and became an integral part of the community. Our close friends from college, A and B, also started their family around the same time as us. They have 1 son, and our families enjoyed vacations, dinners, and outings together. We were the best of friends. A, the mother, returned to work and achieved considerable success, while B faced challenges after his job was eliminated in 2001. Struggling to find work in his field due to economic conditions, he decided to be a stay-at-home dad, SAHD, while searching for opportunities in our area. My ex and B spent time together with the kids, maintaining their friendship even when the children were in school. Unfortunately, you can probably guess the outcome. They had an affair. I know this narrative is extensive, but far from concluded. After a year of exploring adventurous encounters, including mornings filled with passion, B, my ex's friend, broached the subject of a threesome. At that point, we were still maintaining a robust, if somewhat slowing, sexual relationship. B suggested involving his friend, C, into their bedroom, and my ex agreed. On the designated day, C joined them at B's place, and after the threesome, C disclosed his usual payment practices, leaving money behind. Intrigued, he proposed a private session with my ex, who needed time to contemplate the idea. Eventually, C recommended someone else, and a business venture took root. Subsequently, B found new employment and had to part ways with my ex. She operated discreetly, using a separate cell phone and renting a storage unit as her makeshift closet/office. The earnings were invested in outfits requested by her clients, a car kept at the storage unit, and hotel rooms for discreet encounters. She managed her finances entirely in cash, seemingly without introducing the money into our shared life. Any additional expenses were justified as tightened budgeting to fund summer day camps for our children. She meticulously scheduled her work during school hours and prioritized family time on weekends, while our domestic life appeared unaffected. My professional commitments kept me occupied during weekdays, and the weekends were reserved for family activities. Our physical intimacy primarily occurred on weekends, aligning with what I believe was the most practical schedule given my work life. Fast forward to 2016, with 1 son in college and the other a high school senior. I received a call from B notifying me that my ex was in the hospital, seriously injured. I rushed to her side and found her hooked up to machines, with injuries including a broken jaw, nose, fractured orbital bone, and a possible concussion. She had undergone initial treatments and was scheduled for x-rays. The police officer concluded the investigation and left. Desperate for an explanation, my ex, amidst tears and pain, struggled to articulate her experience. The nurse advised giving her time to rest as they prepared to move her to a room. I received a bag of her belongings, including unfamiliar attire and heels, discovered in the hotel room. Begrudgingly, I left her to rest and informed my sons about the situation. As she regained consciousness that night with the medication's haze lifting, she divulged more details. In my quest for answers, I confronted B about why he called me and how he knew before I did. He reluctantly confessed to my ex's clandestine activities, omitting the affair and his involvement as her procurer. I was devastated. After her jaw surgery and recovery at home, the full story unfolded. I disclosed the affair and B's role as her pimp to A, my ex's friend, who promptly ejected B from their lives. As my ex regained her strength, I made the decision to end our relationship. I asked her to move out, and she relocated to live with B. The divorce proceedings were initiated. Now, 5 years post-divorce, I find myself still harboring love for her. It feels as if she has passed away, and the grief remains unbearable. My sons are aware of her actions, but I have not communicated with her since her departure. Thanks for watching.